Welcome to Hooray IELTS Writing. This session will be covering Academic Task 1, Report Writing, that is Process Diagram. Now this is how you approach this type of question. The time limit given for this type of task is 20 minutes. You will be given one task. You need to compare and contrast information here. Ideally, you are suggested to write 160 to 180 words, although 150 words is the minimum. Make sure you summarize and report the main features. The criteria for task 1 are as follows. Task achievement, which basically assesses whether you have understood the task, whether you've analyzed all parts of the task and written accordingly. Coherence and cohesion determines how you have connected your sentences so as to be able to express your ideas clearly and in a proper coherent manner, while at the same time covering all of the points given in the images. Grammatical range and accuracy, of course, checks your grammatical skills. You must be good at forming simple as well as complex sentences, using correct articles, prepositions, and other parts of speech. Finally, lexical resource. Lexical resource forms the vocabulary section. Therefore, you must use appropriate vocabulary while describing different conditions that you see in the images. This is how the topic will be presented to you. You will be given the time limit at the beginning so that you can divide your time. Spend the first 2-3 minutes analyzing the task properly and taking down notes depending on each paragraph. Only then start writing for the next 11 minutes. The remaining minutes can be used to review your answer. There will be a further description of the image given to you. In this case, it is the diagram illustrates the process that is used to manufacture bricks for the building industry. Further on, your task will be mentioned, and that is summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. Now remember, this is the minimum limit. You are suggested to write 160 to 180 words. Now, this is an example of a process diagram. Here you can see different parts of machinery. Process diagrams are usually about man-made or machine-related things, and they usually come in stages. So when you are discussing or when you're taking down your points, make sure you use the picture as a proper guide. Divide your points based on that and use correct vocabulary to express each of the stages. Make sure you cover as many figures and words as you can from the diagram. If you miss out on that, you might miss out on cohesion. Now this is the structure that you can follow. First, in your introduction, begin with a topic sentence. This should be around 1 or 2 sentences. You can paraphrase the title here. If a time frame is given, mention the time frame. If it is not, you can avoid it altogether. When you go to the body, you always begin with an overview, then followed by the amount of information given, then followed by the amount of information given. You can mention the stages. Make sure you mention the number of stages during the overview. Then look at the main features and all the other sub-features. Use time connectors to determine how the stage begins and how it ends. Now your main body paragraph can be divided into 2 paragraphs. Following this, you can mention your closing paragraph, which is your conclusion. Here you must summarize the features again and mention the word overall. Overall, what has been your observation about a particular image? Now, here are some important points and strategies to be kept in mind while doing the report writing. And they are: 1. Use of transitional words or phrases, especially when you're connecting one idea with another. In the case of, let's just take stages, you can say in the first stage, and then the next sentence could begin with in the next stage or following this. Similarly, when you're doing graphs, or other images, you could talk about them in an organized manner using good transitional words and phrases. Earlier, the graph depicted this. Following that, there has been a transformation. These are the kind of words and phrases that you could use. Make sure your ideas are properly organized and that you're using keywords given in the image. Analyze the topic thoroughly. It is very, very important. Especially take 1 minute to jot down all of the main features that you need to report. While writing, ensure that you maintain the academic style and follow the format of the structure. With regards to English grammar, make sure your tenses are correct. This, of course, will also depend on the timeline or the time frame given in a particular image. Look at it closely, observe what period of time is mentioned or what periods of time are mentioned, and use the correct tense accordingly. When doing so, ensure that your parts of speech, namely nouns, pronouns, articles, verbs, etc., are correctly used. Most importantly, when doing sentence construction, make sure you properly use the subject-verb agreement. When the subject is singular, the verb will be singular. When the subject is plural, the verb will be plural. This is something that you have to practice repeatedly. Do not use contracted forms of words. In writing, it is not accepted. Task 1 or task 2, so be careful about that. Use cohesive devices. Again, these are word connectors. They could mean contrasting words. They could mean words that add information, for example, in addition to, or additionally, or however, although, etc. They are also known as linking phrases, as it is mentioned in the vocabulary section here. Which brings me to a very important point. Make sure that when you're writing, you write appropriate vocabulary. Learning some basic jargon related to graphs or diagrams or life cycle, etc., could be really useful. So learning some good descriptive phrases, learning some good verbs, and learning different synonyms about them will definitely help you increase your score in the lexical resource section. Do learn some idioms and expressions. Identify keywords and connect them with good words and phrases. Make sure you do not make spelling errors. Now, here are some important tips for practice. When practicing for this particular task, ensure that you use appropriate vocabulary. Identify the keywords correctly, critically analyze the topic. Do not use contracted forms. Use the passive form only where possible or where necessary. Use transitional words and phrases. Coherence and cohesion is very important, as is the logical organization of ideas. Use correct pronouns. Maintain the academic writing style. Now, to do this task properly and accurately, as mentioned before, you must use good vocabulary and relevant vocabulary. So using words that denote change or that denote comparison and contrast will definitely give you an edge in the writing test. For example, on the left you can see language of change. Words like gradually increasing or reached a peak or increased at a steady rate denote an increase or a higher level. Whereas phrases like slight fall or fell or at a low of denote decreasing. So instead of just using the words increased or is at this percentage, you could use these kinds of phrases to improve your language skills as well as your vocabulary score. Similarly, words like comparison and contrast. However, in contrast, on the other hand, whereas, while, although, these could be used as connectors and discourse markers. If you want to learn how to use them better, try making sentences with them. Furthermore, especially for diagrams or at times maps. You could use time connectors. This will be very useful for any diagram that has stages. So phrases like to begin, following this, denote what comes after what. So if you say next, you know that something is coming up next. If you say in the subsequent, it will denote that it is towards the end or the final stage. Similarly, words like then followed by finally to begin can also be used. Now, words denoting observation are as follows: estimates, findings, calculations, analysis. In the first case, second case, first example, second instance, these all denote observations that you make about different kinds of images. So, based on the kind of image you're talking about, go ahead and use them, but make sure they are relevant to the image. That is the end of this session. Thank you.